but just say yes. I hope this is a continuation of week to week, listening to the broadcast to what God has to say for you and to you and for you and through you. And it is my joy to serve each one of you. I'm Linda Volkmar, and just say yes. That sounds so easy, and yet can be so very challenging. Today, it's going to be the first part of a two-part series on Rebecca, a woman of promise and problems. How many times does that not sound like your life or mine? Oh goodness, I think so many times the various challenges I've faced that I've cried out in desperation for the Lord to come and rescue me, not knowing whether to turn to the left or the right, or stand still or be still, or scream or shout. And yet he brings us through. When we fall on our face and when we climb to the heights of new mountains. So Rebecca was not a whole lot different. And we know that in Genesis 24 to 28, and I'm not going to read that, but I hope you will look again at Genesis 24, 1 to 28, and then again jump a few more verses to verse 58 to 67. It's about Abraham and Sarah. It's about Isaac, who is their late in life promise from the Lord. Isaac. Proverbs 3:10 says, get my mouth to work, a rare find is an able wife. She is worth far more than rubies. That's what Solomon said. He too had promise and problems. It seems to be a common tendency among believers, but we don't want to end up on the note of problem. He has built us to be an overcomer. Sometimes your most challenging moments are your most defining moments. It means you got to dig your heels in. It means you've got to die to your flesh. And so we think often of Isaac and Abraham and Sarah, especially Abraham and Sarah. We think of it, he's almost 100, she's in her 90s, and God has promised them a child. Really? I think you missed that promise. Oh yeah, you did. Who do you know that's had a baby at those ages? Really? Give me a break. That's how we address it today, I'm sure. Yet when God speaks, he fulfills his promise. In America, there's a TV show called The Bachelor or The Bachelorette, and it's always about trying to find that perfect match. Oh, that perfect man or that perfect woman. And let's kind of reset the biblical stage. It's the only recognized son of great wealth. He's got a wealthy father, Abraham. And he's going to be the heir to have an inheritance of great wealth. Not everybody gets that here on earth. He's the prize of his mother. Sarah's waited a long, long time. Her arms have ached to have a baby. Sarah has anticipated years and years, days and hours and months, and years turned into decades of anticipation of that child. But God. And then at this old age, she has a miraculous birth. And he is promised that he would have numerous offsprings and that God would make an everlasting covenant with him and his descendants. And in Genesis 17, verse 19, it says, "Then God said, 'Yes, but your wife Sarah will bear you a son, and you will call him Isaac, and I will establish my covenant with him as an everlasting covenant for his descendants after him.'" Abraham had already questioned God and had taken Hagar and had birthed Ishmael, not in God's promise. How many times did we get impatient? Oh, it's just taking too long. Well, I must have missed him. Let me do what I can do. And we really mess it up. Therefore, the mother of these children, Sarah, and the grandmother of the children, and the grandmother of the children's children needed to be chosen very carefully. Oh, is this Sarah? Let's see. Isaac is this young bachelor. He's available. His father's Abraham. He's known pretty much in the region. And Abraham's made great preparations for him finding a wife for his son. So Abraham sends a servant. Most believe the servant was Eliezer, and he was the steward of the household, so he knew them well. He saw them in high tide, low tide, blessings, disappointment, hurts, frustration. He knew them. He knew Abraham before Isaac was even born, and maybe even considered thinking, well, maybe Abraham was that promise of a son, of inheritance. Abraham pulls him aside and he says, I got something I want you to do. Maybe he said, and I'm paraphrasing, maybe he said, I just don't move as well as I used to. Could you do this for me? I'm going to send you out to find God's promise for my son. She's got to be special. She's got to be chosen by God. She can't be just any woman. She can't be just any young girl. This is a very delicate assignment. So he sends them to Haran in Mesopotamia, where Abraham originally came from and where many of his family members still lived and dwelled. Abraham believes it's the best fit for his son. I'm sure Abraham over the years had spent great amount of time in prayer, because we think here in America, oh, they're in their 20s, oh, they're in their 30s. Well, that wasn't the case with Isaac. He was in his 40s. And Abraham chooses a woman not from Canaan because they didn't believe in the living God. They believed in a pagan God. And he knew that it would be a curse by God if he chose from the Canaanites. And so the God of Abraham and Isaac had to find an equally yoked, matched partner. Someone Isaac could be one with. In Genesis 9:22 and 23, it talks about marrying outside the covenant with an unbeliever. And, we talk about it maybe about Isaac, but it's still pending today. God says, do not be unequally yoked. Abraham said, we can't stop the promise of God. And God and Abraham had spent great lengths of time. Abraham was called the father. The father. Marriages needed to be ordained by God then and now. And many times people, whether men or women, are enticed by the flesh. They're enticed by beauty. They're enticed by wealth. They're enticed by convenience. There's all kinds of things that can draw you away from what God has chosen. I just recently heard a pastor say the most important thing you need to do in an upcoming marriage is make sure that your partner is chosen by God. And even chosen by God will have some intense moments. God is interested in what he joins together. Regardless of what society or the standard of the world is. Oh, do you know how much money her dad has? Do you know how much they would inherit? Do you know what they drive? Do you know where they live? All those don't play a part. It needs to be a marriage that's committed and sealed by God. Didn't God create the perfect woman for Adam? He pulled her out of his ribs because he knew exactly what Adam needed. And God knows exactly what we need. And what if you didn't do that? Then you repent, you ask God to forgive you and bless you where you are to be a blessing to the mate that you have. And watch God work. Someone that you can bless, someone that you can find joy and happiness with, not just exist. So many marriages are just in existence. Oh, great excitement the first months, first years, and then, well, didn't you? Yeah, I got to go home. Even sometimes in the Christian community, it's like, I got to go home. The old woman is going to blah, blah, blah. Or, oh, he always. That isn't a God idea. Treat them with utmost respect. Even if they aren't respecting you, you give the image of Jesus Christ within you. The servant is instructed. Eliezer is instructed that God would go before him and he would send an angel to find the right woman. You got to believe that the angel will go before you to find the right woman, whether it's you or your children. That when I conceived my children, I began praying for their mates. I hadn't done everything always right myself, but I knew that it wasn't what I thought. It was what did God think was right for my children. And I didn't know at those times whether I was having a son or a daughter. But God, whoever I'm going to birth, God, you birth inside of them someone in this window that will be a blessing to them. What a privilege for a parent. The servant, so he's like, I'm going to serve my master, Abraham. Think how much faith it took for Abraham to trust God, to trust Eliezer, to trust Sarah, to do what Abraham wasn't able to do for himself. That's a lot of faith. Are we any different? Some of my most trying moments for faith have built some of the finest roots. I have a friend that gave me an orchid for a key birthday. And I brought it home, and it was so beautiful, and it was blooming, and I was like, oh, I love flowers, and I love plants. And so she had bought me this beautiful orchid, and I had it a short window of time, and the soil felt a little bit dry, so I had some orchid fertilizer. So I put it on the orchid, and all of a sudden I realized there were black dead spots on the leaves. And then all the blooms, shriveled up and fell. And I was so devastated. And this is maybe a week after I got it, and it should have been fine for several weeks. And so as I had it over the next year, the leaves looked kind of shriveled, and I was like, should I keep this? Should I throw it? And one day I was on my phone, and it showed that if you had a plant like this that was an orchid, the best thing you could give it was garlic water. And I was like, garlic? I don't personally like garlic because I can smell it through my pores. So I rarely eat garlic, at least not in very strong portions. And I put garlic on my plant, and it revived it. Now I've got leaves and green roots growing in the pot and growing on top of the soil. And I'm like, it's all about the ingredients. It's all about knowledge, wisdom. Whether it's growing a plant or it's following the Father, it still takes trust. And so Abraham knew he could give his son wealth, but he knew he couldn't find the right bride. And so Eliezer travels, and it's estimated that he probably traveled about 550 miles. And you think about that. He didn't jump in his little sports car and drive down. He didn't jump on his horse and ride. Maybe he took a camel. Maybe he walked it. We don't know. But I guess we do know, because it says that he created a camel caravan that went to Nabor, and that was where Abraham was from. But we know that camels don't generally move all that fast. But he goes to where Abraham's brother is, and Eliezer does two things. He prays for help from God, for success. God, I need success. Today, I need loving kindness for you, God, and for my master at home, and help me be exactly the man that he believes me to be, both from heaven and earth. Then he uses logic, and he says, how am I going to know if she's the right one? God, I need some wisdom. And so he says, there's going to be, by the time I get there, it'll be about the time the women come out to draw their water at the well. So God, could you just make it that if somebody offers to water my camels, that I'll see the servant's heart and I'll know your hand is upon her. And he continues to pray. And he prays for that sign of recognition. Can she let down her jar for water? And camels get really thirsty, and they store up a lot of water for the dry, hot times. But I want my master's son, Isaac, to have the best. So now he too has to exercise faith in his Lord, in his God, in their God. By nature, Eastern women are generally shy, especially if they don't know a man. If this woman responds with unusual boldness, it has to be God. I know it would have to. I've seen too many women that don't even recognize when they see a man they don't know. The woman would have to be unselfish, and she'd have to be hardworking and sensitive and strong, and she'd have to be kind of healthy. God, if she's going to draw water for my caravan, and I think somewhere in Scripture it says there was 8-10 camels. And a camel, by nature, generally stores 30 to maybe 60 gallons each. Now, you do the math. That's a lot of water. Now, Isaac is nomadic, so he moves a lot, just like his father. So she's going to have to be willing to be adaptable to maybe something she's never embraced before. How true is that in marriage? Many times, a country girl marries somebody from the city, or the city guy marries the farm girl, and they move to a farm and he don't know diddly about the farm. Or many, many variables. But Isaac has stayed with Abraham and Sarah, who are aged. Now remember, their ages when he was born, and it's now 40 years later. So he's not a young bachelor. He's cared for his parents. He's shown respect and honor. He's cared for them in their more tender, frail years. And she'll have to compliment him. And Abraham has told his servant, no matter what she says, don't take him to her. Ask her to come. And so now Rebekah has heard about her uncle Abraham from her father and from relatives, and that, oh, they had this child in latter years, and it was a miracle from God. And there's been a promise that there will be a land that God has promised to his descendants. Again, can this be true? Well, yes, it is true. And when Eliezer had put his hand underneath the thigh of Abraham, it was like a binding covenant. It was like going to the bank and having a notary stamp and imprint some important documents. It was a covenant, God-given agreement. And Abraham says, now, if the woman won't come, you're released. You just do your part and ask. Isn't that what God asks us many times? Linda, just ask. Just ask me. Just trust me. And if I don't respond, then okay. But will we ask? Will we go the extra mile on something we don't know any idea which way it's going to go? Will we trust? Will we have the faith to trust God more than we trust our own reasoning? But before Eliezer can even finish speaking, Rebekah offers to let down her jar and water his camel. I don't know about you, but I bet his mouth fell open. I bet he went, oh my goodness, God, that's exactly what I prayed. And I'm sure he's just looking at her in almost disbelief, and yet he knows that, oh, this must be God. This must be the woman. I'm sure he now is analyzing every move she makes, every step she takes, every facial expression. And when she finishes watering all the camels, he gives her a gold shekel ring. Now, in America, many times, it's somebody gets engaged and it's like, let me see your engagement ring. Let me see your ring. Let me see how lovely it is. But it's not how big or how flamboyant it looks. With the shekel, it was how much did it weigh? And this was more about 6 different materials that went into the shekel. It was gold and silver and brass. It probably had some nickel tucked in there somewhere also. And he says, whose daughter are you? He wants to make sure before he says too much or does too much. And then he says, is there room for me to stay over to lodge in your father's house? And he looks at this young woman and she's beautiful. And he's like, oh my goodness, she's beautiful like Sarah was when she was really young. And she had been set apart in her village by her beauty. And she's the daughter of Bethuel, Abraham's nephew. And her father is an Armenian of Paddan Aram. And she's asked if she would go. And she agrees. She had to have faith too. And they leave the following morning. What a difference a day makes. One day in the presence of the heart of God can change your life in a nanosecond. Don't second guess God's timing. He's always right on point, always waiting for just say yes. And that's what she said. Thank you for tuning in. Stay tuned for the second part of our continuation of Sarah, Isaac, Abraham, and Rebekah.
The preceding program was brought to you by the Holy Spirit Broadcasting Network, HSBN Television.